Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the massive 208 billion shilling health deal between Kenya and the US. It's a partnership that promises to completely transform healthcare, but it's also sparked a really fierce debate over data privacy.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get a sense of just how big this partnership is. Then we'll unpack what the deal actually contains, dig into the public's very real privacy concerns, look at how the government responded, and finally, ask what it all means moving forward. So let's be clear about something right from the start. This is not just another aid package. Nope. This represents a huge shift in how the United States is approaching health funding in Africa, and Kenya is right at the heart of this new strategy. Let's talk numbers, because the sheer size of this deal is, well, it's staggering. It locks in up to 208 billion Kenyan shillings. That's about 1.6 billion US dollars, which is going to be invested over the next 5 years. This is a massive injection of cash into Kenya's health sector. Now, what's really interesting here is the strategy behind it all. This is the very first agreement of its kind under a new US global health strategy. The idea is to cut out the middlemen, the NGOs, and send funds directly to partner governments. The goal, at least theoretically, is to give countries more ownership and accountability. So where is this huge pile of money actually going? Well, the agreement gets pretty specific about its priorities. The funding is aimed squarely at the core of Kenya's public health challenges. Yeah, we're talking about the big ones, HIV, TB, and malaria, but also supercritical areas like maternal and child's health. And, importantly, it's about building up the country's ability to handle future outbreaks. And this is crucial. The funds aren't just for temporary projects. They're being plugged directly into Kenya's own government systems. We're talking about agencies like the new Social Health Authority and KEMSA. The whole point is to build health programs that can stand on their own for the long haul. But almost as soon as the ink was dry on this deal, it was signed back on December 4th, serious questions and anxieties started bubbling up from the Kenyan public. The celebration very quickly turned into suspicion. The main concern, the one that just took over social media and public conversations, all boiled down to one single, really sensitive question. Could this deal mean that Kenyans' most private health information was about to be shared with a foreign government? This quote from lawyer Willis Otieno just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures why people were demanding answers. They weren't just vaguely worried. They wanted specifics. They feared this could give the U.S. a backdoor to their deeply personal medical records, things like your HIV status, your vaccination history, even your mental health records. So, with this wave of public outcry growing, Kenyan officials had to step in quickly to clarify the terms of the deal, and they hoped to convince the nation that its privacy was not for sale. Government officials came out with a really strong message. They started calling health data a national strategic asset and made it clear that Kenyan law, not this new agreement, was the final word on what could or could not be shared. So here's the crucial point they tried to make. Officials insisted that the only data being shared is what you see here, de-identified and aggregated. So think large-scale public health reports, not your personal patient file. They claim your name, your ID, your specific medical history. All of that is completely protected. The government also really emphasized that this deal doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It has to operate within a very strong legal framework that's already in place, pointing to Kenya's constitution and a whole stack of laws like the Data Protection Act. They stressed that any data request would have to jump through multiple hoops of Kenyan approval first. This slide basically sums up the government's point-by-point rebuttal. The concern, the U.S. will get access to patient files. The clarification, nope. Kenya keeps sole ownership of all its data. The fear of data mining, the deal itself explicitly limits sharing any personally identifiable information. But hold on, the concerns weren't just about ones and zeros on a computer. What about actual physical samples? Things like blood, tissue, or other biological specimens that are so important for research. And on this point, the answer was even more direct. Medical Services Principal Secretary Oma Aluga put it plainly. The U.S. pushed for a specimen sharing component, but Kenya explicitly refused. This was a clear line in the sand that the government says it absolutely did not cross. Okay, so the deal is signed, the money is allocated, and the official clarifications have been issued. Where does all of this leave us? What's the big takeaway? Well, on one hand, you have a historic investment that could genuinely strengthen Kenya's health infrastructure for years to come, and on the other, you have these very strong,
very public assurances from officials that all personal data is safe and sound under existing Kenyan law.
And that really leaves us with the final question, doesn't it? The ultimate success of this whole partnership might not depend just on the billions of shillings being spent, but on whether the government can maintain enough transparency to convince Kenyans that their most private information will always, always remain secure.